LaBianca Murders. On August 10th, 1969, Los Angeles was still reeling from the brutal killings at a home the previous night. But no one knew the horror was about to continue. A 44-year-old grocery store executive and his wife, approximately 38 or 39 years old, and a boutique owner, had just returned to their home in Los Feliz after a weekend trip. The couple settled in for the night, unaware that several intruders had already selected their house as the next target. Around 2 a.m., the couple was awakened by intruders in their bedroom. The group's leader was present initially, tying their hands with leather thongs and reassuring them they would not be harmed. After robbing them, the leader left the scene. 3 followers then took over. The couple was separated. The wife was taken to the bedroom, while the husband remained in the living room. A pillowcase was placed over his head, secured with lamp cord wrapped around his neck. Similar restraints were used on the wife. One attacker began stabbing the husband with a chrome-plated bayonet. The first wound penetrated his throat. Despite the injury, he cried out, "Don't stab me anymore!" In the bedroom, the wife could hear the sounds of her husband being attacked. She fought desperately against her restraints, swinging the lamp still attached to the cord around her neck as the male attacker stabbed her husband 12 times. When the 2 female attackers struggled to subdue the wife, the male attacker entered the bedroom and stabbed her with the bayonet. The women then continued the attack with kitchen knives. She was stabbed 41 times. Evidence later showed that many of these wounds were inflicted after death. The killers then carved the word war into the husband's abdomen and left a fork protruding from his stomach. They wrote "Rise, Death to Pigs" and "Helter Skelter" in blood on the walls. The murderers were eventually caught and sentenced to life imprisonment after their death. Sentences were commuted when California temporarily abolished capital punishment. Wedding Day Crash. On July 22, 2016, what should have been the happiest day of their lives turned into a nightmare. A 58-year-old groom and his 57-year-old bride had married that morning at Leeds Register Office. After the reception, the newlyweds left with another married couple, close friends who had attended the celebration. The 63-year-old husband drove the Suzuki with the groom in the front passenger seat. The 60-year-old wife and the bride sat in the back. They were heading to Scarborough for a week's holiday along the A64 road. It was around 3:40 in the afternoon, with heavy but flowing traffic. The 4 traveled together toward their destination. Investigators later determined that the driver may have been momentarily distracted by something in the car. The car drifted across the center line, near Scampston Bridge. Oncoming was a 38-ton truck driven by a truck driver. The truck driver saw the car cross into his lane about 10 meters ahead and slammed his brakes, but the distance was too short. In the seconds before impact, a witness following behind saw the collision happen. Evidence showed the car traveled quite a considerable distance over the white line. The driver did not brake. The car plowed into the front of the lorry. The impact was catastrophic. The Suzuki flipped onto its roof, the truck's massive weight crushing the passenger compartment. The car suffered catastrophic damage. All 4 wore seatbelts, but they were useless against such overwhelming force. The coroner later stated it was most unlikely anyone could have survived. Medical examiners determined that all 4 died from multiple injuries. All 4 died at the scene. The groom, a former purchaser, and the bride, a former healthcare worker, were both from Leeds. The male driver, a conservation officer, and his wife, a well-known local artist from Scarborough, also perished. The coroner recorded verdicts of accidental death for all 4. The coroner ruled the truck driver was blameless, stating he was in no position whatsoever to avoid the catastrophic collision. No drugs or alcohol were involved. The coroner concluded that we will never know what caused the momentary distraction. Torture of an elderly couple. On April 14, 2013, the quiet community of Davis, California was shattered by a crime of unimaginable brutality. An 87-year-old retired attorney and musician and his wife, a 76-year-old pastoral associate, were asleep in their bedroom in a condominium on Cowell Boulevard. The couple was known for their community involvement and gentle demeanors. In the early morning hours of April 14th, a 15-year-old boy broke into their home by cutting a screen on a window. The teenager, who had a history of homicidal fantasies, moved silently through the house until he reached the couple's bedroom. He stood watching them sleep for several minutes, trembling with nervous excitement about what he was about to do. The wife awoke and screamed when she saw the teenager standing over them. In the darkness, they could make out the shape of a knife in his hand. The attacker immediately began his attack, stabbing the wife as she screamed. When the husband awoke, the attacker stabbed him as well. The teenager tortured them as he stabbed the husband 61 times and the wife 67 times with a 6-inch hunting knife. The wife pleaded with him to stop as the teenager continued his assault. Blood soaked the bedsheets and splattered across the walls. The couple's cries became weaker as they lost blood, but the attack only intensified. After the killings, the attacker disemboweled and mutilated their bodies. He cut open their torsos and placed objects inside them. Later, he would tell investigators he felt pure happiness during these acts, and that the murders gave him the most exhilarating, enjoyable feeling he had ever felt. After his arrest, the teenager described the killings in chilling detail. He was tried as an adult despite his age and sentenced to 52 years to life in prison. In 2016, Proposition 57 led to a hearing in 2018 where a judge ruled the case should remain in adult court, keeping him in adult prison. Subsequent legal challenges have been rejected, maintaining his adult sentence. Yacht Killings. On November 15, 2004, a couple had decided to sell their 55-foot yacht, the Well-Deserved. The 57-year-old husband, a retired probation officer, and his 47-year-old wife, a homemaker, planned to move closer to their new grandchild in Arizona. They had lived aboard the yacht for several years, sailing along the California coast into Mexico. The prospective buyer, a former child actor on the show Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, arrived with an accomplice for a sea trial. The buyer's pregnant wife and their baby had attended an earlier meeting, which helped gain the couple's trust. The couple had no reason to suspect danger as they welcomed the visitors aboard their vessel near Newport Beach. Once the yacht reached open water, approximately 5 to 10 miles offshore, the situation changed abruptly. The buyer and his accomplice, along with another accomplice who had joined them, suddenly overpowered the couple. They forced the husband and wife to sign documents transferring ownership of the yacht and giving access to their bank accounts. The terrified couple had no choice but to comply, hoping cooperation might save their lives. After obtaining the signatures, the attackers bound the couple with duct tape and handcuffs. They blindfolded them and secured them together with rope attached to the yacht's anchor. The husband and wife were still conscious, still aware of what was happening to them. The wife sobbed and begged for her life, saying she was too young to die. The husband fought back, kicking the buyer so hard he knocked him off his feet, but the first accomplice struck the husband with a devastating punch. According to eyewitness testimony from the third accomplice, who later cooperated with authorities, both were still alive when they went into the water. The anchor pulled them down rapidly. The wife's head struck the side of the yacht as she was dragged overboard. The water at that location was several thousand feet deep. They would have struggled instinctively against their restraints, but there was no escape from the ocean's depths. Their bodies have never been recovered. The buyer and first accomplice were eventually convicted and received death sentences, while the buyer's wife received life imprisonment without parole. The third accomplice accepted a plea bargain after testifying for the prosecution. Lover's Lane Massacre. On December 20th, 1968, the crisp winter air enveloped Lake Herman Road in Benicia, California. A 17-year-old Eagle Scout had borrowed his mother's Rambler for his first date with a 16-year-old junior at Hogan High School, known for her cheerful personality. The male teenager was a senior at Vallejo High School. Both were well-regarded students with promising futures. The couple had told their parents they were going to a Christmas concert at school, but like many teenagers, they sought privacy. They drove to a secluded turnout along Lake Herman Road, a popular spot for young couples. The area was dark, illuminated only by moonlight reflecting off the nearby lake. They parked at the turnout, believing they were alone. At approximately 11:15 p.m., a car approached and parked near them. The teenagers likely thought nothing of it at first. Perhaps just another couple seeking seclusion. But moments later, a figure emerged from the vehicle and began firing at their car. The attacker fired shots into the Rambler, forcing the couple to exit. 10 shell casings would later be recovered from the scene. The male teenager was shot in the head behind his left ear as he emerged from the car. He collapsed, fatally wounded but still breathing. The female teenager managed to open her door and flee on foot. She made it 28 feet before the assailant fired his .22 caliber semi-automatic pistol. 5 bullets struck her back. She fell face down onto the gravel, dying at the scene. The male teenager was still alive when a passing motorist discovered them minutes later. He was unresponsive and died en route to the hospital. The entire attack had taken no more than 2 minutes. There were no witnesses and no usable tire or footprints. Their killer vanished into the night, later sending taunting letters identifying himself as the Zodiac. The Zodiac killer was never caught, despite one of the largest manhunts in California history. The murders of the 2 teenagers marked the beginning of a killing spree that would terrorize the San Francisco Bay Area for years. The Fire and Stabbings. On September 28, 2014, The upscale community of Skillman, New Jersey awoke to shocking news. A 72-year-old former New Jersey transportation commissioner and hospital executive and his 69-year-old wife, a retired teacher, were found dead in their bedroom after firefighters responded to reports of smoke coming from their home. The couple had spent the previous evening at home. Records showed the husband had a FaceTime call with a grandchild at 5 p.m. and sent a work email around 7 p.m. Nothing seemed amiss until approximately 6 a.m., when smoke was spotted billowing from the second-floor windows of their colonial-style house in the Meadows neighborhood. When firefighters entered the master bedroom, they encountered a scene that puzzled investigators. The fire had been contained mostly to the bedroom, with an unusual pattern suggesting an accelerant had been used. Beneath the smoke and ash, they discovered the couple on the floor near their bed. Both had been stabbed multiple times, the wife 12 times and the husband 5 times. The initial police theory suggested a murder-suicide scenario, proposing that the husband had stabbed his wife before turning the blade on himself and setting the fire. But forensic evidence told a different story. The wife's wounds indicated defense injuries on her arms. The husband's wounds included a slash across his throat and a stab to his jugular that would have made it nearly impossible for him to continue attacking or start a fire. Most critically, the weapon that killed the husband, described as having a narrow blade like a stiletto, was never found at the scene. The autopsy revealed the wife was dead before the fire started, while the husband, despite severe injuries, had apparently tried to move about the room, leaving blood smears on various surfaces. Evidence showed the husband had soot in his lungs and carbon monoxide in his blood, indicating he was alive when the fire began. Smoke inhalation ultimately contributed to his death as the fire consumed the oxygen in the room. The case remains officially unsolved, with the husband's manner of death changed from suicide to undetermined in 2017, though the family continues to seek answers. Monster of Florence. On August 21, 1968, a warm summer night descended on the small Italian community of Lastra Signa near Florence. A 29-year-old masonry worker had been having an affair with a 32-year-old homemaker, known in the village for her numerous relationships, earning her the nickname Queen Bee. That evening, they drove to a secluded countryside spot in the man's car. The woman's 6-year-old son was asleep in the back seat. The couple likely believed he would remain sleeping while they engaged in intimate activities. As night fell, the couple was in their car in the isolated location. Around midnight, as the couple was together in the car, an assailant attacked. Without warning, the attacker approached the car and produced a .22 caliber Beretta. The man barely had time to register the threat when the stranger fired, killing him. The woman was also shot multiple times and killed. The sound of the shots was partially muffled by the isolated location, but they were loud enough to wake the child in the back seat. The child witnessed the aftermath of his mother's murder. The male victim died almost immediately, and the woman also succumbed to her wounds. The killer chose not to harm the boy. In a strange turn of events, accounts vary about what happened next. The boy appeared at a nearby farmhouse around 2 a.m., roughly a mile from the crime scene. When asked about the incident, the child told the occupant that his father was sick at home and that his mother and uncle were dead in the car. His testimony would later change multiple times during police interrogations. The woman's husband was convicted of the murders in 1970 and sentenced to 14 years in prison. However, this became the first of 16 murders attributed to the Monster of Florence, a killer who was never conclusively identified despite decades of investigation. In 1982, ballistics tests revealed that the same weapon had been used in subsequent double murders committed while the husband was imprisoned, connecting this case to a serial killer who terrorized the Florence area until 1985. Ex-wife's revenge. On November 5, 1989, in the upscale neighborhood of Marston Hills in San Diego, a 44-year-old medical malpractice attorney and his 28-year-old legal assistant turned wife were asleep in their bedroom. The couple had been married for just 7 months, following the attorney's bitter divorce from his first wife. The ex-wife, a 41-year-old mother of 4, just 2 days from her 42nd birthday, had been seething with resentment since discovering the attorney's affair with his new wife 2 years earlier. The divorce had been contentious, with the ex-wife claiming the attorney used his legal expertise to leave her financially disadvantaged. In the early hours of that November morning, the ex-wife put her plan for revenge into motion. At approximately 5:30 a.m., she drove to the couple's house at 1041 Cypress Avenue. The ex-wife used a key she had taken from her daughter to enter through a back door. She moved silently up the staircase, carrying a .38 caliber Smith & Wesson revolver purchased months earlier. The ex-wife entered the master bedroom where the couple slept. The new wife may have woken first, sensing someone in the room. The ex-wife raised the revolver and fired 5 shots. 2 bullets hit the new wife in the head and chest, killing her instantly. 1 bullet struck the attorney in the chest as he reached for the bedside phone. 2 other shots missed, hitting the wall and a nightstand. "Okay, you shot me. I'm dead," the attorney said, now fully awake and recognizing his ex-wife in the darkness. The ex-wife had removed the phone from the bedroom so he could not call for help. The attorney remained conscious for several minutes, bleeding profusely onto the bedsheets, before dying. The ex-wife left the house, called her daughter to confess, and turned herself into police hours later. At trial, the ex-wife claimed temporary insanity but was convicted of 2 counts of second-degree murder and sentenced to 32 years to life in prison. She remains incarcerated at the California Institution for Women, repeatedly denied parole. If you want to see more videos like this, click the video on screen now and make sure to subscribe.